Guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Leslie's joining me today. Hello, Leslie. How you doing?
Hey, Danny, I'm great. Thanks for having me here.
You're more than welcome. So, first time to the show. Do you want to give people a little bit of background on yourself?
Absolutely. I've been a seller on Amazon since 2010, but people know me a little better for my work with Riverbend Consulting. I'm a co founder there and run our client services team. We help people get their ASINs and accounts reinstated after suspension, and also just help them with the pesky problems that come up on Amazon where you don't know what the heck to do and you need someone with some expertise. We try and help solve those issues for clients every day.
Excellent. So, what we're going to cover today, because I said to you before, when we was off call, I said we've covered account health and we've covered suspensions. But what's interesting about this is we're going to take more of a data approach to it and look at working through ASIN by ASIN, starting with the worst performer, and then carry on that continued iteration of optimization. Cool. Do you want to kick things off then? Let's start running through some of the overview parts. This set the scene, and then we can start going into the detail.
Absolutely. So most people look at account health as just a problem. It's an area of your account where you see these flags pop up and you get really upset because Amazon's got some complaint from somebody. They want your invoices. They're complaining about your packaging. You have voice of the customer problems. And so you just see that as something negative you have to deal with every day to keep things up and running. But what if you look at it on the flip side, which is how can we use this data that Amazon gives to you, some of it account health related, some of it just ASIN related, and figure out how to actually have a more profitable account with fewer problems on a weekly basis. So it depends on the size of your account and how many ASINs you have. Some of my clients do this process once a month, some do it once a week. But essentially, what you're doing is you are choosing your lowest performing ASIN, and we'll talk about the way that you choose which one that is, and
Yeah.
you work on fixing the problems. And when you've got that one better, you look at the next lowest performing ASIN. So the benefits are twofold. On
Yeah.
the negative Amazon account health seller performance side, you're not going to get that ASIN suspended in the future, most likely, because you've solved the problems.
Yeah.
But then on the profitability side, we all know that when an ASIN goes down or if it has a high return rate, you are just eating it on the fees. It's
Mm.
killing you on fees. A lot of times you're better off not selling an ASIN than to
Yeah.
keep selling it and have a high return rate. So you are preventing suspension, but you're also improving profitability over time in your account.
So let's talk about those red flags on how you would break down to analyze. Let's say you've got 20, 30, even 100 SKUs, like, and then we can talk about larger accounts because there are going to be some cases where some of the key ASINs that they've got so many ASINs that they've got problems across multiple, and it's got to work out which file you put out first.
Absolutely. So there are several places to look for data in your account. The first and most obvious is to look in account health. And let me tell you why. It is because Amazon has told you in recent times, whether they suspended the ASIN or just gave you a warning, they're telling you there's been some problem with that ASIN. Now, I can already hear the pushback from people that, yes, sometimes they tell me when there's just one person who complains about an ASIN. Okay, that's possibly true. But remember, Amazon has data they don't show you in your account, which is annoying, but it's true. So there's probably multiple complaints about that ASIN, and you want to head off those problems as quickly as possible so you don't get a suspension. But then beyond that, there are great reports. There's voice of the customer, there's customer reviews on the product, there's the customer reviews that are your store feedback, and there's returns reports that are both FBA and merchant fulfilled. The FBA are much easier to work with,
Yeah.
obviously. All of those are going to give you some strong data that you can look at to choose which ASIN you're going to tackle first.
Yeah. Cool. So let's run through some of the key points. You're going into an account. You start to do the analyze process. What's the step by step that you would do in order to view that? So for the listeners of the podcast, they might do an SOP or they might employ you for the services, etc. How would you start that whole process rolling? What's like the A to Z for you?
I start with whatever is noisiest. So
Yeah.
that means looking at customer reviews of the product and customer feedback for the store. Why this matters is that there are certain types of products that people are more likely to be noisy about, meaning they're also going to be more likely to return them or to complain directly to Amazon. So these are things where there's health and safety concerns, usually something along those lines. So I read through customer feedback on reviews and on the storefront, and you'd be amazed at how quickly you can start to find data patterns. Some of these data patterns may not be your fault. So I'll give you an example from last week. There's a supplement that I was looking through their feedback on their store, and most of the negative feedback said the product was already opened or the safety seal was broken. This is from a major manufacturer. I can guarantee you they are not sending out open product. It's FBA and their poor returns handling. Doesn't matter that it's FBA, you still want to note that because there are things that you can do about that. So that is where I start, is with the noisy complaints, the things that Amazon is most likely to act on, which are safety oriented. Then I look through voice of the customer. Super important to have the right mindset, especially for voice of the customer, because a lot of times people start to react and say, oh, this is a one-off. Oh, they just want a free return. Oh, whatever the case may be. And I get that as a seller. I understand that we all want to believe that we've done it all right. But again, sometimes it's Amazon, sometimes it's you, sometimes it's the customer. Don't assume it's always the customer. With an open mind, look through voice of the customer to find those trends. Had a client once selling a shampoo and conditioner combination together, and they, in their warehouse, unbeknownst to the owner, they had sent out a bunch of shampoo. Where did that show up? It showed up in voice of the customer. And my client didn't want to believe it till I showed him the data and said, stop being defensive. Obviously, you're wrong. So then the next place that I look is in returns reports. Really important here to do two things. Number one is to run your actual sales and then look at your returns for the corresponding period to come up with a return rate, because you're going to compare your return rates on different products to choose what to tackle. Then you can download that spreadsheet of returns from Amazon. So the FBA returns report, and it has so much great data. So usually I first sort by reason, and I delete all the reasons that don't matter. Things like the wrong address, came back to the warehouse, item refused, accidental order, anything that there is no fault by you or by FBA. Delete all of those. Then you resort it by ASIN, and you can look by ASIN and very quickly pick out if there's a quality problem or a packaging problem showing up, and compare that to your return rates to see if you can quickly surface which ones you're losing the most money.
Cool. And then where do you go from there?
So it's important to really start sorting through root cause. So number one, if something stands out on return rate, that's your obvious winner. Winner meaning what you're going to tackle first. If you've got return rates that are similar across multiple products, you're going to start looking by serious return reasons or serious complaints. That's where you turn on your Amazon brain, because that's the thing that's going to get suspended fastest. So if there are things that sound like a safety concern, like that broken safety seal, if there are things that sound like a repetitive quality issue, or things that sound like inauthentic complaints, that they don't think it's real, something about it seems counterfeit, you're going to escalate those internally over just garden variety, I didn't like it kind of things on the product.
Yeah. And so with that, that's the core, what you do on each the ASIN. That's first rendition, shall we say. But how do you then work it out to, right, we've worked on this batch of ASINs, we're going to go on to the next batch, and next week we'll work on those and those and those. How do you operate on a larger account to structure that over a period of time in order to dial in? So, because obviously you can't fix every problem straight away, because you've got to wait for feedback. There'd be something else that in the loop that slows that whole process down. So what is the kind of pattern you put into place, or structure?
So, two things. First, when you have this first set of data, a lot of times you can allocate some of these problems to different groups in your company depending on how big you are. If you have a prep center and you have an obvious problem with prep, you're going to have them solve that as their one ASIN for this month or this week, whatever the time period. If you've got a packaging issue, you're going to need to look at redesign. And like you said, Danny, you're probably going to wait to sell out if you're a private label seller until you implement that redesign, but you need to get that going. Sometimes it's as simple as fixing a product detail page because something's not clear and it becomes obvious from the comments that they weren't clear on what they were receiving or they thought they were getting something else. You can give that to your listing team. So you can triage these out to different groups to solve as many as you can quickly. If you have a large catalog, really what we recommend to people is that they start sorting by brand, because sometimes you have a problem that is limited to a brand or a product line that is really putting your return rates totally out of bounds for your whole account, but it's really this particular product line. And so I have the most fun example ever for this. I have a client who is an authorized reseller for Nike, and they sell tons of Nike clothing, lots and lots of clothing. And we all know how difficult clothing is because
Yeah.
of all the returns. Well, they noticed that their return rate went crazy. It was just obnoxious. Usually it's like 15%, 10 to 15, and it was like 35. And what is going on? Well, so we sliced and diced the data. One certain line, product line, was being returned at like an 80% rate because everything ran too small.
Yeah.
But they had never looked at it as, let's sort it by the line within that larger brand. If you sort by that line, you'd figure out, wow, it was just completely sized incorrectly for what Nike customers expected. Well, any private label seller can do the same thing. You look at your brands and your product lines and see if there's anything consistent. Perhaps you had one person set up all of your A plus content for a certain brand and there's something confusing or misleading. Maybe you're having one prep center do a certain line of products and there's a packaging problem there. So if you try and sort it that way, a lot of times you can turn up trends that you can solve quickly.
Yeah. And what help? Where would you go from there? So you've dealt with the packaging. What happens with things like what's I'm going to use is I'm trying to think of the terminology for it. Not copyright infringement. What is it called? I've lost it now.
Where it has like the suspected IP complaints.
Yeah. So yeah, IP complaints and stuff like that. Apologies. Yeah, my mind was slipping there. What do you do in that scenario? Because it can be quite technical in terms of how you're going to resolve that kind of problem. So let's talk about some IP complaints from ones that are not too bad to deal with to like really hard ones and the length of time it takes to resolve.
So IP can be an absolute beating.
Yeah,
Just
that's what I'm saying, because it's such, it's how long's a piece of string? Because some of them can be relatively fast to deal with. Some of them are false complaints, which if with proof, you can obviously rectify that pretty fast. But there are other ones that are more convoluted, would need money, etc., and the time of being taken offline in terms of losing sales, especially if it's a key player in your SKU set.
So on the spectrum of easy to hard, the quickest to solve are typically the copyright claims, because you can either disprove it quickly because the people who are watching your show, Danny, these are pros. They're not out stealing photos from third-party websites and smacking them into their Amazon listing. So usually you can prove that those are false pretty quickly. You might have accidentally used some text or a tagline that sounds similar to someone else's. You can put someone on that, solve that very quickly. Then you move to trademark. Those are usually dealt with quickly because we can actually point to the trademark files with the trademark office, and also brand registry is helpful with those. And then you get into the entire set of really ugly, difficult, and hard, like patent complaints. Patent complaints are almost impossible to solve without an attorney, sadly, unless you can prove that someone is being what's a good word? Like they're trying to blackmail you. That does happen. I think we've all seen that. Unfortunately, if you're in the services space, there are people out there who say, "Oh, I'll go away. You just need to pay me 5 Bitcoin."
Yeah.
And those unfortunately do take longer. If there is someone who's obviously a scammer, there are ways to escalate that at Amazon, and they will override the legal team
Yeah.
on those for patent. But none of those are easy. All of them take a month or longer.
Right. Cool. Is there anything that we haven't covered so far?
No, I think the point that I would just like to emphasize the most is that this isn't just about account health. It really is about your profits, and something like the way that you package a product going to FBA, the way that you package something originally and making sure it matches your listing. These are all things that will hurt your bottom line, not just hurt your Amazon account. Oh, and you know what, Danny? You know what we didn't talk about is FBA problems, because
Come on, let's cover that.
a
Yeah.
lot of these things are caused by FBA,
Mm.
by their returns handling or the way that they do things.
Yeah.
So just a couple of quick tips on that. If you have an item that's a consumable or a topical, it is important you put some kind of a safety seal on the box or the package that says, if seal is broken, item is not new.
Yeah.
You're not saying that for your customer, you're saying that for Amazon returns handling. Because if they see it and they see a broken seal like that, they'll put it in the discards instead of putting it back in your account, because they don't take responsibility when they resell open things. You have to take responsibility. This is really important on things like hair tools, anything that has a gross out factor. If it's returned and resold, you want to have some kind of a seal to help them grade your returns for you. And then the second thing is, if they are fulfilling your item in incorrect outer packaging, you can get that fixed. You can get it escalated in FBA where they will regrade the packaging. So for example, I had a client selling candles that were in glass jars that were being sent out in padded envelopes. You can't even make this stuff up. And we had to escalate it throughout the FBA team until finally someone admitted this was problematic and it should go in a box. So you can solve this stuff, but first you have to make a case and have the data. And if you do all the returns report stuff we're talking about and build a data set, Amazon will fix those problems for you over time.
Sounds good. What is the best way that people can reach you?
Our website is riverbendconsulting.com. And we have a phone number on there that, yes, we actually answer our phone during office hours, and we will talk to you about your Amazon problems. And if you head on over to LinkedIn and put in Leslie Hensel, I will pop up. I have fresh new Amazon content almost every day of the week and would love to connect with you.
Excellent. Guys, don't forget to grab yourself a Branded by Women ticket, discount code 10BBW. Seller Sessions is sold out as of yesterday. So watch the website in case there are any refunds, and they'll be automatically appear back into inventory. I'll be back here again tomorrow. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and I'll see you again soon.